Manhattan Network. Maybe you could think about becoming producers over here, maybe, or the people you're working with. And in the audience, welcome very much to Conversations. We have two guests, both of whom I think it's fair to say are very interested in education and communication issues. And if I may, on my far left is Charles Thompson. He's an educator, and he's the founder and director, I believe, of a very interesting movement or entity that also is a very rich site, I would say, called Sound Business, Inc. And Charles, welcome very much.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great site, incidentally.
Thank you.
And on my immediate left is Dr. Katherine Alexander. She is a Ph.D., and she's also an educator, and she's also interested, and she has a site that is really very interesting in its right, too, and that's called Conversation on Diversity. She's very interested in some of the issues of diversity, and we're going to be talking around means by which people might be able to be included in the mainstream of society, maybe better than they have, including a lot of people who've been left out, and it seems to me that's something we're going to be thinking. Welcome, Katherine, very much.
Thank you very much for having
Maybe
me.
you could kick it off here, if you would, Katherine, your own background a little bit. This idea, the conversation on diversity, what do you mean by diversity? Are we talking about class groups within our society, or the diversity, or maybe you could just share it with us, your own background perhaps also.
Sure. I've been working in marketing research and employment research as well. And what I've discovered, I'm also teaching a class on diversity at the University of South Carolina. And what I've discovered is that there's an opportunity for diversity learning through Conversations on Diversity, a diversity learning experience that is designed to reach different audiences and to inform those audiences such that they're empowered to make diversity work for them.
Diversity.
Yes, diversity. And what I mean by that, in my particular case, is this. To present time, for most of the time that diversity has been in the conversation when it comes up, it's been what I'm calling macro diversity. And when I say that, I'm talking about where diversity is normally talked about, who's talking about it, who's utilizing it. And in those cases, it tends to be in the workplace, policies and practices designed to take advantage of the power of diversity, to leverage the power of diversity. And what occurred to me is that what is needed is micro-diversity. And when I say that, what I mean is to empower the people with more than just a concept that others talk about, but to give them access to diversity such that they can use it in their day-to-day lives.
And to highlight their own uniqueness.
Definitely.
There's a song, Love is a Many-Splendored Thing. It seems to me diversity is a many-splendored thing, that there ought to be much wider array of voices than normally we have paraded across our means of media and so forth.
And my goal, a major goal through Conversations on Diversity, is to make diversity for the people, of the people, and by the people, to make it accessible to everyone, so that if it's a high school audience, students and faculty, and my work with Charles Thompson, there it's about cultivating diversity, understanding, and awareness in its broadest sense, which is about the differences that people bring to bear in any situation. Whatever those differences are, they are what's needed today because of the team building that's going on and the globalization that's going on.
Absolutely.
And when I talk about it for other audiences, it might be at a college level or in the workplace, then it's about what makes a good diversity program. So that's a lot more structured compared to what I'm doing and attempting to do through Conversations on Diversity and the program that I'm now affiliated with, my flagship operation at Charles's school, the school that he's working at, and the program that he has implemented.
Very good. We were just chatting about the UN and so forth. Somebody told me there's something like, diversity is a very interesting subject, seems to me, really diverse. Because I think we have something like 192 nation states, political entities in the world, and somebody told me from the mayor's office, told me that there are sizable communities of 189 of those 192 nation states living in the greater New York City area. Everybody in the world seems to be in New York. It's very diverse, and the world is becoming, as you say, globalized. And I don't know, just another sidebar perhaps, but I think there's something on the order of, because you've got subcategories of the nation state. You have ethnic identities, and I think there's something like 5,000 languages in the world. That's a major way in which you get diversity and culture that follows in the train of the uniqueness. So it's a many varied world, and I think it's wonderful. I love New York because everybody seems to be here, and I very much like the concept of diversity, everybody in the orchestra playing, and having the diversity much more than the monoculture that we've tended to have out of history, don't you think? I think it's something to be really celebrated.
Oh, I definitely agree with that, but I would like to add that what we're talking about with the program that Conversations on Diversity is now involved with is celebrating individual differences that go beyond ethnicity and language and culture from the biggest sense. For example, if you have a household with first, second generation family members, they have cultural differences. They are diverse, even though perhaps demographically they might be locked into a particular...
One generation to the other, sure.
So, and diversity of ideas.
Yes.
Diverse thinking, problem solving, and best solutions are through diverse thinking, and the multitude of experiences that people gather as they move along, they bring with them a host of different perspectives that are needed to bring new attention to new looks at the problems that we're dealing with today. So I think of diversity as being bigger than the demographics, the cultural, the ethnicity, the language, those kinds of things. People, each person has its own unique qualities, and at least with the high school students, that's what we're trying to build on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you look at the diversity as seen through the eyes of a teenager, did you ever raise a teenager?
And no, thank goodness.
That's a very diverse thing, and I think it might segue nice over into the child, because you have a thing going here, Randolph, or maybe you could share your own background a little, and then this development you've got.
I came to A. Philip Randolph Campus High School in West Harlem during the 1990-91 school year.
Okay.
I came to A. Philip Randolph from the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, where there I ran a youth program called RPM Institute. RPM Institute was a program of the Cathedral aimed at helping kids from the Morningside Heights neighborhood have access to careers in the media behind the scenes.
Very good,
we ran that program for a number of years and ended up taking the program, which was working at that time with college-age students, to going to A. Philip Randolph, because we felt that you needed to start working with kids younger with any kind of training. You need
Thank you for taking on that task. That's a very challenging time of everyone's life, I believe.
We went to the high school, came to a high school that had diversity, came to a high school that had a rigorous academic program, came to a high school that was unique in New York City and unique in the country because it was a public high school. It wasn't a specialized school like a Stuyvesant or Bronx Science where you take a test. It was a regular high school that focused on getting kids ready for entrance into competitive colleges. Very rigorous school. The other thing about the school that made it unique was it had students from all boroughs. It wasn't a neighborhood school. So there were kids coming from Staten Island, from Brooklyn.
Is that unique?
That was pretty unique at that period, because most of the schools, unless you were in a specialized school, you were generally in a neighborhood, what they call a zone school.
Yeah, right, okay.
So this was a school that was primarily people of color, mostly Hispanic and kids of African descent.
West Harlem, is it?
West Harlem. It's on the City College campus.
Oh, 138 up there?
135th, and the building is the former home of Music and Art High School, the famous Music and Art High School.
That's not the one that made
That was the Fame. That's the Fame
school.
That's
music. I want to live forever.
That's it. So it's a great location. Named after a great American, A. Philip Randolph.
Yes, absolutely.
City College was a prominent institution in its day and is on its way back.
It was great.
West Harlem was the Renaissance zone, Stivers Row. So you had an institution in a great spot with all of this diversity and all this history.
Harvard on the Hudson.
That's what, and they used to call it Harvard, the Harlem of Harvard of Harlem. That's what it was called.
And they had it for a long time. They had no tuition. It was, I think, way back in the 30s.
That's
and
right.
40s.
That's right. That's right.
It was a place where there was intellectual improvement and things going on in a unique way. Yeah.
Coming to that stage into this school, looking at what we could bring there that would help to take what was already happening with the academic programs and what the Board of Ed was providing there, and what we as a not-for-profit organization could bring there to enhance the quality of the education that the students were receiving.
It was the thing added on to what was there,
absolutely.
A program.
And feeling that there was...
Did you say 91?
The school year was 90-91. We actually started our pilot program in the spring of 1991.
And you had that experience from John the Divine. What did you study at university?
I went to Delaware State University.
Yeah.
And my background is in the arts. I'm a musician.
You do music?
Back for many years, from back in the 70s, a long time ago, but that's another life.
I remember that.
That's another life.
I remember Woodstock. Yeah.
That's another life.
Yeah.
So,
it's still there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So now at A. Philip Randolph, with our program and our primary piece is the College and Career Preparatory Institute, we run college tours, interview preparation, SAT prep, all kinds of courses aimed at making our students aware of opportunities that exist and doing things to motivate them to do well academically.
Okay, do academically and to try and be able to compete successfully for entrance into
competitive schools.
Into competitive schools.
And what my organization focuses on small, private, liberal arts schools. So now that's when the partnership and our interest in what Dr. Alexander brought to the table.
Right.
In trying to prepare our students to go into these new kinds of environments.
New kinds of environments.
When you're leaving urban public school and talking about going to Middlebury or Wesleyan or Hamilton or Gettysburg, that's a different type of environment.
Right.
So what
it's a big transition for all of us.
So what do we do to prepare them? What we think is key is building self-confidence, understanding who they are, what they bring to the table, understanding why they might get a certain kind of reaction from different people, why things look different to them. That's why we said
diversity.
This diversity piece that Katherine had developed would work with us, because I believe her work will prepare my seniors and make them stronger candidates for these elite private liberal arts schools. We're working with them on the academic side. I'm getting them prepared with the SATs. The personal development that they need, the understanding of who they are, the opportunity to have conversations on a regular basis. That's what Katherine brings to the table.
Magnificent work, and it seems to me there's an overworked term. Bucky Fuller was the first one who came up with it. He used to give talk to thousands of people, and he'd say, have you ever heard of the word synergy? And no hands would go up. But now it's a synergy. It's something more than the sum of the parts, where there's something really good, like a good jam session.
Yes.
What did you play?
I'm a vocalist, play a little piano, but a vocalist.
Okay.
Yes.
Composer?
I didn't know that about you.
Composer?
Little bit. Mostly vocals. Started out doing all classical, and then found I could make a living doing jazz vocals.
Oh, really?
Did that for a long
okay,
time.
We got that's really. But that's another.
That's another career.
Did you still doodle on the piano once in a while?
Don't do much of that at all.
No,
don't do much music at all now, because I've been doing this is 20 years doing this
I can see,
now.
and you've really built a heck of a program, and I congratulate you
Thank
enormous
you.
on it.
Thank
It's
you.
helping a lot of people, and I can see real synergies between the two of you. How long have you known each other, and how long are you thinking of putting your works together to get a better, more than the sum or something? I don't mean to pry into what you're
We're doing that,
setting up.
And I'll start this and let Katherine finish it.
Okay, good.
We were just chatting a little bit before we came here into the studio about how we became connected. When I left teaching, I was a choral music director in Baltimore, outside of Baltimore, Maryland, Pikesville, Maryland.
Okay.
Choral
Was that a high school?
It was a high school. Started in middle school, went to high school as a choral music director.
Okay. Boy,
Decided to change careers, moved to New York. My wife and I decided to change careers, moved to New York. Came to New York, hit the streets. the person that hired me, the first job I got when I came here was a person by the name of Rose Diamond, Katherine Alexander's mother.
Oh, wow.
Who hired me in 1978, 79.
Okay.
My first job here in New York City.
Hallelujah. Okay. Right.
And I saw her come by the office, dropping off something, a meeting with her mom time to time. I don't think we ever had any real conversations. But her mother, who became like a mother and mentor to me,
yes,
is the connection that brought us together, where we sort of been in communication. This is a lot of years now.
Yeah, I understand.
And
they go by so fast.
And we came together when I invited her to come to speak to students at a career event.
Okay, I think
and that sort of brought us together.
I think we have a chronologic link in that Miss Diamond then was your mother, who was also interested and was a model to you. And I think we ought to understand better that women who too often have been seen in the background where the men are up on the podium, but the women really are so important in terms of nurturing youth and to be their mentors in the very fullest sense of the whole personality of the person, rather than mentor just, let's say, in the intricacies of physics or something like that we usually think. But your mother, why don't you talk a little about her?
Oh, my goodness, Mom.
She was a formative person and was involved in a lot of the things that inspired you, I would presume.
I would say that the quality that everyone that I know comes to mind when they would talk about my mom is words that have been used here is the nurturing that she gave to people she believed in.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Charles earlier that I'm not sure we could be here if I didn't have the history I have with him, because he came in approved. I already know the kind of person he is. I know the integrity that he's got. He's been working on this program for years.
Yes.
And my mother gave him a stamp of approval before I ever really got to know exactly what he was doing.
Okay.
So over the years we talk every now and then, and it makes what we're trying to do, what we're doing together, easy. I don't have to find out any more about him than what I know, and I think that makes for a very positive working relationship that I don't think people in friendships and business and relationships necessarily pay attention to, the integrity of the person, who they are.
Are you sure you run a rigorous enough test on this young man?
They're starting.
Mom said he's okay. I didn't know about that.
That's right.
You know, my mom never mentioned that aspect. Did my mother know that
she did, because as a matter of fact, when I came to New York, when she had to do background checks, and one of the persons that she dealt with was the music supervisor for Baltimore County, Maryland. And she called him, and she came to me, and he said he would take me back in a minute. So she said that was good enough for her.
That's good, yeah. It's always good if people are willing to welcome you back any time. That's a good sign.
And again, the kind of thing that we're doing here, believing in people and trying to give them those things that help them to believe in themselves.
Yeah.
That's the kind of background both of us come from. And you have to take it to the students that we serve. You have to go to it with the same passion, the same kind of commitment, to be, because they need that same kind of nurturing that we got in our homes.
Yeah, it should be not only the home is really important. I think it really is, but then also just that would be an overriding paradigm or something of our institutions. Ought to be ones that encourage what you are doing as part of their overall mission. I mean, the whole institutional structure of our society should be doing that with the youth coming up. And one wonders why it's not more easily seen. If we go back in history, I look back at Dickensian. They had ideas of education where they would beat you if you didn't do ideas of education, different notions of psychology, all this. We're making progress in terms of our overall societal and even political thinking that encourages not only the fulfillment of everybody, but fulfillment of everybody within the context of their own unique diversity. And that's something, rather than trying to get one set standard that goes for everybody, that a lot of people would seem to think is the pattern they would be more comfortable with, rather than bothering with all the uniqueness that is unique to the individual.
There's room for improvement.
Yeah.
But right now, one of the things I'm happy about is that there are opportunities for organizations like ours, for partnerships like ours, to collaborate with administrations in schools, as I've done at A. Philip Randolph.
Okay.
And then the school team has their job. They have objectives that they deal with every day. And then our team comes in with the other part of that package.
Yeah, it's an add-on.
We believe that that is a way that this can work, because it's not that every school is the same and that you can operate every school the same way.
We don't want everything to be the same, do we?
But,
or every country or every person, no.
But it's easy because of the societal changes and where we are today as a culture. It is difficult to manage school systems and do these public institutions. And we can go on and on about that thing. But what we found that does work is if we have a partnership with that school, we can bring this other component into the environment. We can shape the culture there.
Do you find the schools on large, or no, the schools community on large, as they say, there's an old-fashioned term, cottoning on to the idea that you're bringing to the educational process through the thing you've done at Philip Randolph, or you with the things you've done through Conversation on Diversity?
Is the question, do you think the schools, that the system is ready for this kind of model?
Is it becoming more acceptable of that? Whereas in the past it might have been all you got to do is read and write and arithmetic and you know what I mean?
I do, and I believe I believe
or more the ethnic identities and stuff, and you have to become like us.
Well, I think part of the issue which has led to the problem or the reality of what we're facing, I prefer not to say problem, just the reality that we're facing, is that the emphasis has shifted away from people to number crunching, to counting beans, quantification, and what we need to get back to is what we've been losing, and that is that we're overpopulated. We're dealing with problems that have to do with numbers and money making, and how can we do that most effectively, instead of how do we cultivate the people who are going to be fulfilling, doing the jobs, handling the responsibilities. And if you don't cultivate the person, you're not going to produce the quality work and performance and success, you meaning the companies, the organizations, the education system. All you're going to be doing is turning people out like an assembly line. Some will be successful, some won't, but the success is also not necessarily real success if you haven't cultivated the person.
Thank you. That's very important. I thought a lot about it. You know, if I'm not mistaken, if you don't mind, I think at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, that the principal occupation, and a lot has to do with occupational training and that sort of, but the principal occupation was single-family farmer. And a single-family farmer would be doing a lot of different things. If you had a farm, you had to go out and fix the cart, and then you had to go feed the chickens, and you had a lot of different things. But then it all got, I think 2% of our population now in agriculture, it was 35-40%, was agriculture, single-family farm. Then they all went to the factories in Detroit. I'm from Detroit. In fact, if I may, it's a sidebar, but on my mother's side, Henry Ford, who was destined to become a great industrialist and so forth, used to tinker in my mother's family's garage when he was about 10 and everything in Detroit. But they set up an assembly line. And then those people come, and they were doing a lot of diverse things, individualized things on the farm. It was not idyllic, but you know that. But then they go and they had to train people to stand there. Charlie Chaplin's Modern Time comes to mind. You have to stand there 8-10 hours a day doing exactly the same thing over and over. So you had to really try, in the name of education, to treat people in a way that they're going to fit into the economic order, which called for automatons. That would they had to not think. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, that's why we're here.
That's
because
the
principle. I think the principle still holds, and unless you have a resurfacing of what's important, which is what we're trying to do.
The whole person, is that an overall
The whole
term?
person, sure. The holistic. I mean, these words have been out there for a long time.
Yes.
Dealing with the person as an organism, as an entire structure. You don't just feed them. They need exercise. They need walking. They need to be thinking. They need to have experiences.
Yes.
Charles has been doing this for years.
Congratulations.
And I'm happy to be on board with this as it happens. I mean, our time has come where I get to join an entity that has a track record, has a proven track record. And I get to make a contribution.
You have a proven track record yourself.
I do have
you
that.
Do, yeah.
Yes, I do. I'll accept that.
Yeah.
And I get to share that track record. I get to share my experience. I'm very much a people person.
Yeah, okay.
My entire career has been dealing with people in different capacities, counseling, conducting qualitative research, doing focus groups. Now I get to apply everything that I've learned working in human resources.
Yes.
I say I've been getting ready for this moment all of my life, and I've come full circle to where I've...
Didn't the Beatles make a song about
probably.
that?
I didn't get any money for it.
No, you didn't get royalties on that?
No.
No, but I think you probably got some of that. There's the term empathy comes up. I think empathy is extremely important in terms of psychology, and in a lot of things. You never had to do the military, did you?
No, I didn't do that.
No, you wouldn't
I
have
did
had
not.
to. They wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But I'm older. They drafted. I had to be drafted. They draft you in the Army. I mean, it was awful. I used to try and explain to the sergeants that we could do things more democratically.
No, they didn't want to hear that.
The drill sergeants really didn't want to hear that. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that model is more apropos of what is thought of as education out of history, it seems to me, or the nurturing of the upcoming youth and everything like that. Just learn, boop, 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 boop. And do you understand what I'm saying? Who are some of the heroes of that? John Dewey, would he be somebody that you would, or what they call progressive education? Or what are the roads up that long road up Mount Sisyphus to where we're getting to where we're able to deal with whole people rather than just people that will fit onto an assembly line kind of mentality to fit an economic order and that sort of thing?
Well,
it's improving?
I can't say that it necessarily is without pockets of the kinds of things that you're doing. And you had a vision years ago that made it clear you understood this needed to be done.
Because people were talking about holistic education years ago.
They were. Who are some of the leaders in that? Would Dewey be thought of that way or not?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
John Dewey was a giant. Or Horace Mann, he came along with the idea they're going to give public education to
this
everybody.
isn't new stuff, so we're not reinventing the wheel.
I'm sorry.
And when you talk
back over history,
and that's wonderful.
And talking about these things, and I know some of the conversations Katherine and I have had regarding raising students' expectations. Because again, going back to what we try to do with the students in the school, we try to have them starting their freshman year to start looking at schools. When kids enter, the average kid entering a public high school who's saying that they're going to college, you ask them to name colleges. They're going to say Harvard, Princeton, and then maybe whoever won the national football championship or the basketball championship. You know a few names. They'll say City College.
Teenage time. What are you, 16, 15 when you come
my point is that...
that's a terrible hard
But
time.
that's not been information that's been given to them. It's not a part of their lives. It wasn't a part of my life growing up, okay? So what we do, we started introducing them to schools as soon as they come in. We started talking about what it's like to be on a campus. We started talking about the values of education. We have first and second generation kids, so a lot of times there's no interest in leaving the city. There's no interest in going away to be at a college campus. So we talk about those kind of things.
Okay.
Again, working with Katherine, what we're looking to get out of this is it raises students' expectations, because the more they value themselves, I believe their experience with her, and she can talk about this, will open them up to experimenting, going beyond their safe zone. Can you just talk about that a little bit more?
I'd be happy to. Students first need to understand what diversity is and what they bring to the table. A self-awareness and self-assessment process starts things off. What are you interested in? What do you like? Get them to understand that they already have a wealth of what they need unto themselves. To get them, as we evolve through the program, to help them understand that their way of thinking, there are diverse thinking patterns, that it's okay.
And it might be diverse from the dominant culture.
Definitely, and they can perhaps work on cultivating the other side to that, or another aspect of it. Understanding how to work with cultural adaptability, which will help them to reach beyond their neighborhoods. Understanding or having them talk about what success means to them, and what they will have to do, what they think they will have to do to pursue it.
That's a biggie.
How to deal with change, moving out of your comfort zone. How to deal with it, how to to encourage curiosity so that what they encounter or what's in front of them is no longer viewed as a threat but a challenge, and they get excited about it.
Huge subjects you're ticking off here, dear.
They're
huge subjects.
They're wonderful. Yeah. How to communicate more effectively. One, understand how you think and communicate, and two, learn how to listen actively to what people are saying so that when you respond, it's within a context and not defensively and not just in terms of what you think you need to add to the table. So it's preparing them to take a step beyond what they're doing, to think beyond I say the limitations of their environment, and I mean physical limitations, to think beyond just the classroom situation where they're one of how many students in a class?
35.
A lot of students. When do they get to talk and express themselves?
35.
Yeah, most classes are going to be 35.
Isn't that large?
Yeah.
And they don't get a chance to share their ideas as readily as they might in a class or in a school where the classes have smaller numbers of students. Writing and getting feedback on their writing. How about this? What I do and what we plan to do in my sessions is to have conversations.
I like that term, conversation.
Well, you would, right? The name of your program.
Yes.
You understand what it means.
I've called it conversation since the
You
beginning.
understand what it means. And what it is an active learning opportunity. What I don't do is get up and say, this is what you have to know. What I do is engage them in a conversation to get them to think about things that they might not have considered before. Now, I'm not trying to teach them everything they need to know. They'll walk out like a talking head. I want them to come to their own conclusions. I want them to understand how what they've learned fits into their lives, how they can make it work for them. Even if what they do when they walk away is put it in the back of their mind in their toolkits. They will know that they can reach back in there and pull something out that will help strengthen their approach to whatever they're doing because they will have experienced it.
You think these models, we're talking here in the United States, we're talking New York City, there is a component where you could segue over into an international order? The principles that you're discussing in terms of the working of the nations and the peoples of the world in a globalizing context is something that is relevant. All those things you ticked off were so relevant, not only to the students in the school, but also to the world at large.
Well, what my approach comes from...
And you're going to be preparing them to enter that world at large.
Exactly.
That is changing. You're preparing them for the world the way it's moving, if only through the dent of communications and globalization, a global village.
You know, the business, the world of work, the workplace has been doing what I'm talking about. Some entities in the workplace have been doing this. They understand what needs to be done. They understand that cultural adaptability is important.
Who do?
Corporate America, the workplace.
You think they do understand it well?
Certain companies do, but that's where the conversation is being had. They're the ones who are setting up companies with global operations. They're the ones who need to have leaders who can act as leaders for a company that's based here, but understand that they're dealing with diverse populations, and you can't go in there and tell them what to do because culturally, we can start with that. Culturally, the population is different. We view space differently. I can't get in someone's space like that, depending on the culture that they're from, because it's not taken in the same way.
They're trying to save face.
So there are a lot of different things that if you know this going in, companies know this. If they want to market their products in a foreign country, they have to understand who their audience is, and they have to appreciate the diversity. So they're doing that.
Yeah, okay. Could be a little bit of a devil's advocate in a way. We've been downsizing here. I think I saw a piece in the paper. It was really alarming to me because another one of my relatives was an earlier union organizer in Detroit, and the unions, I think in the private sector now in the United States of America, it's down to about only 7%. Now, you get into the public sector and you get into that, there's more organization and so forth, but the representatives of the laborers within the world society and so forth, I think they're in deep trouble. I mean, the efforts to bring some equity to the laborers of the world, and if you do it on a world scale, I think we've had a lot of what they call downsizing, and where they used to do, I don't think we manufacture anything in the United States anymore, hardly at all, and they've gone to other parts of the world specifically because there are people who are desperately poor. Just plain old economics. It's fine to say you can be fine. It's not. You're not able to be fully realizing your dreams and your possibility if you're starving, or if you are in such thing that you have to bow down. We used to have chattel slavery. I mean, these kind of things out of history. but they do it, and they would go to a place where they can get young women or something, and they can just exploit them at 2 pennies and get an advantage in terms of Ricardo, and they went to those other places around the world in order to exploit human labor in order to gain a profit, and that's been one of the reasons why there's been this kind of a thing going on. And you're talking about a world where people are going to be able to realize their full potential, where in fact the world, the way it's organized, is not really organized toward trying to do that except for a relatively small part of the overall world. We don't have a world system in order that's really adequate to realizing the full potential of everybody, partly because of economics. Seems to me economic discrepancy is the main thing, and that's also the main thing that motivates human behavior, is how the hell am I going to get food for the kid to eat, and I'm going to pay the rent, and these kind of very simple, mundane questions. It doesn't leave much time for philosophizing.
No, it doesn't.
Or psychologically empathizing. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure I do.
So how can we set it up in a world that isn't organized right in terms of the get-go of the way we organize world society institutionally, and where do we go with all of that?
The conversation has to begin in institutions like A. Philip Randolph Campus High School. It has to start in public schools. You have
about the world organization? The organization of our institutions and their assumptions?
You have to people have to be aware of the things that you're talking about, and you become aware through education, where you're involved in discussions, where you're meeting people, and your education goes beyond what's in the rubric for this month.
Right.
Conversations, changing things, systemic change through holistic education. All the stuff that we're talking about here. And if you have the majority of the people are receiving a third grade or third class kind of education, people are not thinking. When you look at what people watch on television today, when you look at what's the center of what people do today, you can keep people in front of a tube all day. Well, what are we doing to compete with and to challenge with that in our education system?
That's very interesting to me.
It has to start with getting more young people, more kids who are coming out of this demographic that we serve, who are asking questions.
All right, okay, I'm all for that.
Who are getting the kind of education.
Might stir up a little trouble even,
You have to have more people who are aware and asking questions.
Well, it's interesting. You know, I saw if I may, I saw something. You know, you take your Ivy League schools, and I guess people go there, legacy things and everything. Granddaddy went there, great-granddaddy and all that, and they go there so they can build up a Rolodex. They got the contact with the people. They're going to be able to build a lot of contacts down on Wall Street. They're going to be able to share contracts, make money, get events, and all that. But they also have, and you've also got scholarship. Now, that's real scholarship where there's real things going on at the universities, Harvard and all that sort of thing. But it also is, it's also a way in which there are some people who are very, very good at presenting information. I mean, they're like teachers that are very good. And it's very interesting to me, our leading schools, Harvard, all the Ivy League schools now, have taken the best lecturers that they have, the ones who can really convey, you know, nuanced, good, crafted information, and they're putting their lectures up for free on internet to anybody who wants to go, can have access to the best lectures that you could get at a university of the highest order. And why would anybody want to go to Harvard when they can get everything that they want on this wonderful internet that's coming in terms of the quality of the information conveyed and so forth with the internet coming? And where does that all fit in terms of what you're trying to do with these youngsters?
Most of my kids, I think this year we have 2, there'll be freshmen at University of Penn, so that's that same quality institution. Generally, however, I try to direct the students that we serve towards small liberal arts schools. The reason being, we do that because if you've come out of a public school where you've had all these deficits in terms of resources up and down, most of the schools this year, because of the economics, have taken big hits. You're in classes with 35 people. You there's a limit to the kind of courses that you're going to have. There's no control in a general public school who's in your classroom. You might be in a class where you have 2 or 3 students that have issues that are disruptive, so the quality of the instruction that you're getting could be affected negatively by that. So if a child has survived all of this, and it still has gotten an 88, 89, 90 GPA, They've got grade point average. They've done decently on their SATs, well enough to get into good schools. Then I want that child to get into an institution where they don't have to worry about the budget cuts all the time. Get into an institution where they can be in a class with a professor who's only teaching 2 classes the whole semester, no classes more than 15 students, and you're sitting in a room having discussions.
Maybe almost to a tutorial thing. If you get to a tutorial thing and a mentoring thing and a human relationship.
Getting into an environment where you will have to be able to communicate, written communication and oral communication.
And
it is absolutely required, but where they're going to get that kind of skill, which they've missed in the average public school, they've missed that.
And our public institutions don't have the ability maybe to set up those kind of environments.
And they can do it to a degree. There's some good public schools that can do that too. But I'm looking to try to get these kids into these institutions that they don't even know exist.
Okay.
So you get them into an institution where when they graduate, they can write at a different level.
Okay.
They have ability to use the language to articulate their ideas. They've been in an environment where they've had to think. They've had to analyze. They've had to make arguments. So they come out then ready to sit here and have these kind of discussions. They come out ready to be leaders. One of the people that works with us, Russ Tillman, is working on a project, and one of the things Russ talks about, and I've been looking at a lot of things he's been writing, you're creating young men and women who are going to be part of that leadership level in our society. People who will be prepared to be voices, to bring our perspective.
To the diverse perspective to
bring
the table.
That to the table.
Yeah, and that's
bring that to the table. And right now that is so limited. But you have to get them the rest of this part with their education so they're able to do that. And I get a little passionate about this.
No, that's really great. That's really good. And that's such an imperative, not only in New York City, but I was trying to make the leap to the world. Those are the qualities that we need for the people that are in a world where diversity is going to be able to be celebrated rather than beaten out of them. Did you ever see the thing? The Amerindian people, the way they were treated? It was horrible. Horrible the way they were treated. They were, don't use your name, don't have any concern for all of that. You know, the diversity and colonizing, they would not have any respect for the diversity of the peoples there. They would just say, be like us. That's it. That was what
and
they...
you've got worse.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Slave trade, and you've got that whole operation.
Well, James Joyce said history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. The work you're doing is helping us to awaken from a nightmare of just so widespread injustice and inability to allow the human spirit to flower individually in each of us.
One of the things you had asked before, or I think alluded to, was, is there a model, and I would want to put this to you, Charles, is there a model, does your program and what we're trying to do provide a model to the education system, public education, that can possibly go beyond what we're doing in our little arena?
That's the hope, and part of that model, part of this model is one that says, citizens have to take ownership of public schools. What happens in A. Philip Randolph, again, being there almost 20 years, working with several really strong principals, having great partnerships with the administrative teams in those schools. But I still look at it, it's my school. It's my school in the sense that I'm like all of those educators who have been in that building all of the years, who bring a passion there, who bring a love for educating, who bring a concern. So we have to be voices in what's happening in that school. What are these students being provided? That has to happen all over. You can't sit back and say, well, I don't like what's happened with New York City schools because the chancellor has done that, or the mayor. Schools reflect the people that they serve. They look just like the public that allows them to be what they are.
What about different philosophies of education, or even psychology, or all kinds of diversity? And we've had a thing, if I may, No Child Left Behind was something Mr. Bush got through. They didn't fund it, which was a little bit unfortunate. But then they got it to where everybody is made, or this young woman who's down in D.C. now, Oriental woman, and they're saying they're going to focus on the test. All it is taking tests and getting quantitative answers, test, focusing like that, teaching to the test rather than some of these intuitive things and these human qualities that some people of a progressive nature in terms of education, the whole person would say. So if the system is there just doing something rote, or even on to rote in order and call that learning because you got something you can check within a bureaucratic form. What about that problem in terms of the educators?
That's why the affiliate program is what Charles, and you can say more about this, to not just let the public school systems run the way they've been running, bring in an outside entity that works as a team, as is happening at A. Philip Randolph, so that they bring, that outside entity, your program brings the things that are missing that build on the whole person, the entire, the holistic approach, et cetera, so that the school does what it does, whatever that is economically, and then the ancillary program, the affiliate program, brings the humanistic side back to education. That would mean models around the country.
Seems to me a lot of things you're doing with conversation on diversity is in that realm.
Sure. But it's about getting funding that's separate and apart from the money that's allocated. And again, I'm taking.
That's it.
We've talked about this. The public school system.
You have to talk about it because it's so much part of what is on people's minds.
But schools need partnerships, and without naming the particular schools, well, there are 7 or 8 schools, traditional high schools here in the city, all of which have huge support organizations behind them.
It would be like Bronx Science.
Like Bronx Science, like Stuyvesant, like Brooklyn Tech,
Thomas,
like LaGuardia. I'm sure that you have it at...
those are public schools.
Those are public schools.
There are also your prep schools traditionally.
And they are schools, they are specialized schools, so you're taking a test to get in. And now I think there are 7 or 8. But those are schools with a long, rich history, alumni who are now in their, you have alumni in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s who will put money back into organization for those schools. They can make sure you have the equipment that you need to have. They make sure that they can offset costs when things happen in the budget. You need more of this, you need more of that. They can do those kind of things. All schools need those kind of organizations. Randolph, the population that we serve, are folks who are generally more economically disadvantaged. We serve more economically disadvantaged families. So those families can't provide some of those same kind of supports that a school that's located in an affluent area.
Is really important.
So we come in, a private organization, a not-for-profit organization, and we have to be that family, that support. We have to create a community that supports Randolph. And then again, we have the opportunity that our principal, Henry Rubio at Randolph, he's given us the opportunity to create programs that enhance what he's able to provide to his student body there. So we are working on a program there now with the Humanities Academy in his school. We are developing a curriculum and a new program to enhance what's happening in his program. So partnerships. Going back, the key word here is conversations.
Thank you. I like that term.
When you're talking about public education, we need to allow and encourage conversations. Let anyone who wants to be a part of that conversation come and be a part of that conversation.
Conversation, I said before we started the tape rolling here, conversation bespeaks spontaneity in my way of thinking and is not so well geared toward structure. Like I said to you, and a lot of people complain to me personally with alarming regularity that they wished I was a little more structured and would stick to the point rather than casting off into different things. But comprehensively, but in truth, it's interesting to me because they break everything up into specializations. It's just say academically. Bucky Fuller was a comprehensivist. And in reality, we're coming now, the idea of Gaia, the idea of we're in this universe, and everything, it's all one system.
It's all connected.
And we break it up for convenience, for bureaucratic convenience, into specialization. Let me make a point that Mr. Fuller, he was a grand man, and he had a book called Education. It's worth paying attention to, it seems to me. It was for me as a university teacher. He said education automation in the book, and he said that in a sense that what's really important is the linking, that it's whole synergy. It's the whole system rather than specializing in great depth. You talked about quantitative analysis. As soon as the computer came, they went off on linear regressions, and you could go in tremendous detail into any particular subject. You could spend a whole life on the use of the pluperfect tense in South France. You could write a whole tome and write another big fat tome on that and become a specialist on that. You don't know anything about anything else. You're not relating. You're a specialist. And that's the way in which the curriculum is set up. And there should be a department of everything. Everything is connected to everything else, and I think that's the way. Do you understand what I'm saying? I may be thinking university or broader.
That's why I love liberal arts education.
And, you know, I'm just going to make one last little subversive thing. He said he thought that the pirate, he called them pirate, he got a little bit political. He was a design person, really. He was looking and make design that lets the world work right and let the good come out of people by, you know, good design and every architecture and everything. But he got a little political at the end of his life. He wrote Grunch of Giants and was he A Critical Path? That was Oliver Stone. He's a very large cultural figure, critic of society. But he said he thinks that the people, or you could use the term, you might hear it from your kids or something, you're talking, the Illuminati, that there's an Illuminati of shadowy people who own all the assets and set the pattern for all of our institutions, the funding patterns, everything come down through their canon and that kind of thing that they're going to reify. They have all the ownership of everything, like emperors in Rome. They run everything. A few people run everything. And that they consciously gave money to graduate schools. They're not interested in the dullards. They're interested, but they're not worried about the dullards. They were interested in the bright ones. And they get the bright ones so specialized out on various aspects of reality that they would be like write that book on tremendous detail, so specialized out and so tunnel visioned, CIA won't talk to the FBI. I mean, there's no linking at a pattern. In order to co-opt the best minds into specialized little corners where they will go and not think about the whole. So all of these questions you're talking, and that thing you just ticked off, all those things, those empathetic, all those things, it's all interconnected as a pattern. We don't have enough pattern thinking, and it seems to me pattern recognition is something human consciousness is very good at, but they can co-opt human consciousness by specializing and having also this tremendous concern only with the material things. How the hell do I get bread on the table? Everything is subsumed under this economic order. And do you think maybe it's all coming together now with the cyber things that are going on? And the kids are of a different nature than they were. They're much more, they're very bright. You know, they have a wide experience and everything, but it clashes maybe with some of the institutional structures of the inherited order that is going to have to be subsumed just like feudalism had to be subsumed by an evolving historical pattern. So the kids are in touch with that, and they make a challenge, and maybe we should be listening to them in all of their diversity, maybe more than we do. This is just a sidebar thing, but it says in the good book somewhere the children should lead us. We can learn from the youth maybe more than we allow, rather than it being a one-way street of reifying all of our outdated institutions that we are so taken with. Just a few thoughts.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting is that those who understand the power of diversity understand that you need the brightest and the best. You don't necessarily hire them. Good to Great, I think it's Jim Collins. You get the right people on the bus, and then you figure out what's going to be done, because what you've got is the best minds, and what you want is diverse points of views to contribute to the synergy of a whole other approach to problem solving, which is faster and better and even more financially beneficial.
To the individuals and to society.
Well, clearly to the individuals because they get paid for this, but to the people are valued differently because they're being allowed, when this works appropriately, because they're being allowed to bring what they have to offer to the table and to utilize it in more of a comprehensive. Yes, in fact, be encouraged, not just respected, but encouraged.
Exactly, right.
And to approach situations and problems comprehensively.
Yes.
Put everything.
Thank you.
Throw everything on the table and let's see what else we can come up with. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong, but everyone has the same goal.
Okay, maybe comprehensive and conversations come from the same prefix or the same...
Well, I like that. We'll make that work.
Comprehensive is a term I love very much. I like it's called pattern recognition. I could volunteer. Norbert Wiener, who was the father of cybernetics. I have a friend who was, his father was in the room with him when he coined the term cyber. Everything's going cyber now. Everything's going to be on the internet. It's just moving so quick. It's going beyond exponential, or it's going almost exponential and everything. And he said pattern recognition, no, information overload within a system permits pattern recognition. So you can recognize patterns between things. You're all exercised out of shape because you're in a thing that isn't working right. But if that's seen with here and here, we can recognize patterns at an increasingly comprehensive level. That's one of the luxuries of the time. And the kids have that consciousness.
Well, one of the things that I hope to try to work through with the students is I'd like for them to walk away with an understanding of whatever the big picture is, the patterns.
Okay.
The answers are less important.
Or the specifics.
Yes.
The details are less important than the pattern.
Than how you think about things and what you bring to the thought process. If they can walk out with that, not remembering anything else that comes up in the sessions that we have, they will have a pattern recognition approach to dealing with their college experiences, dealing with the household issues that may come up in terms of whether they feel comfortable leaving or not, in terms of how they deal with other people, in terms of how they approach their jobs, because it won't be there's a right way or a wrong way. There's a way to approach something, and then there's a way to think about it perhaps differently within that pattern, or to merge patterns, but there's a big picture approach as opposed to the specialization.
Thank you. I love that.
That's why I'm glad she's on our team.
I think you're good to have her on your team, and you're happy to have him on your team. You two should get together.
We have gotten together. This is what we're doing.
You know,
and because it's so clear, and because it's so, you know, honest sounds naive to me in the big picture, but because it is all that we're saying it is, it's not necessarily going to be trouble, and it's not approached in such a way that it is troublesome. The ideas that we're communicating are obvious. They are hard to argue with, if anyone's thinking about it. There's always the yes, but.
That is a problem sometimes. People don't think. They react.
But the thing, when there's an answer for for the issues that get raised, and the answers are simply about making things better, not costing you the money you might think it might cost because of the nonprofit status of the organization, it's hard to say anyone can make trouble on against us, but we're not. It's not necessarily about making trouble. It's about creating opportunities and preparing people for leadership, such that they can go out and dig their own paths.
Wonderful! I can't think of anything more worth of dedicating a life to, and so forth. And I congratulate you both enormously on the work, and wish you all the very, very best with all of this. But
Thank you.
There might be a space there for. Somebody once compared the goldfish swimming in the bowl cannot see the pattern. You know, you're swimming in the bowl. You have to be outside of it. Creativity, even creativity, has often been associated with a criminal mind because you're not within the constrictions that everybody's comfortable in. You got to be outside of it, and we need some creative thinking. And if you have something wide enough and inclusive enough and appropriate enough, you could have something that could be subsuming of historical systems, but also within a context that the people who are entranced with those things can begin to understand, including our Illuminati who set up economic systems that could be more just and appropriate for the whole world, so that we could have a transformation of a human culture on a really systems-wide scale. And that may be the promise of the time. You people are leading us in the direction that's helping our youth do that. Congratulate you and thank you enormously for all that work, and particularly for coming in for a conversation on comprehensive consideration of the human condition.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Wish you all the very best. Your pleasure to have the perceptions you can see on the graphics now. Katherine Alexander, Ph.D., and she's got this very interesting thing, Conversation on Diversity, and you could hear it here. And then also Charles Thompson, he's a beautiful educator and founder and director of this Sound Business, Inc., and both highly recommended. Thank you for viewing. Your pleasure. Thank you for coming in. And in the audience, we'll be coming back again tomorrow. But once again, thank you really very, very much, and all the very best. Maybe we can get some of you or some of your students involved over here as producers of cable television.
Russ will definitely be looking at it.
That something that we
well,
could
that's why
Russell's got
Russell is the
right.
person he's heading up